Shambles. I think it is probably time to be joined now by Kevin Walsh. How are you, Kevin?
Great, guys. Good morning.
Yeah, when you were on, you were on before the Armagh game. It was thanks to Carl as well for the news there. You were on before the Armagh game. You essentially called as close as you could call the madness of that game. You called it that it'd be tight.
Yeah, I suppose it was tight, and I suppose after the fact we can all say we called it right. But I suppose it's two unknowns really. So I mean, it's very, very hard to break down winners, and and similarly, I suppose Sunday coming up or Saturday evening, shall I say. The two new teams playing two new teams with not the most of experience, so it's very hard to call those games.
Just go back to the Armagh game. Like, what was it like from your perspective in terms of your coaching hat on? Because, like always, their shooting accuracy. We'll talk to Jeremy O'Sullivan, and he'll be regretting Cork shooting accuracy against Galway in the hurling. But like Galway shooting accuracy throughout the day, and I suppose as well as that, Kevin, like their mental fortitude to come through what was a kind of a Goobo situation in sporting terms.
Yeah, and I suppose the likes of Robert Finnerty, he might be blessed with the amount of pace that some other corner forwards are, but his movement and his decision making, ever since a young fella, would have been awfully good, and he just finds those pockets where he's shooting from, I suppose, under not as much pressure as others with their head down would be, and it shows I suppose the difference between being a very fast player and a smart player, and Robert had brought an awful lot of that full forward line as in just accuracy and high success rates, I suppose, of shooting. So he'd be one of the big things in there. But look, I suppose they're patient, to be fair to them. They got 15 behind the ball at times, like I would have expected. And I remember saying this when they played Clare in the league game, 2 games from home in the league, that it was 1-2 each at half time, and Galway were completely behind the ball from Pip. And you know what? Rightly so, because they're now got a plan. And it's about the quick transition, and as you said, that your efficiency in front of goal is really important.
That was the thing on as well, wasn't it? Just Galway shooting in the modern game, you need that, and they did not waste.
No, they didn't. And sorry, they didn't. And to be fair, I'm not so sure the same space will be there against Derry. I would have felt, it was 20 minutes in the first half, Donegal against Armagh. We said it's the last time, where I think Donegal won that period 9-2, and I think they had about 4 goal chances in that time. So Derry probably won't give up those goal chances, or even given the likes of Robert Finnerty as much time as he got, because they'll have the area blanketed. And I would say that they're a step ahead in relation to their defensive programme. But it'd be interesting then to see, I saw Armagh, they were 7 points forward against Galway, and whether they were listening to the outsides about the lovely kicking game or not, but they tried to tread in numerous kick passes before half time, and they weren't really on. Galway had the back covered up, and they hit them on the counter. So they're going to, it'll be how patient Galway can be on Saturday as well with that.
Like, do you subscribe to this idea, Kevin, that the timing of your tactics is as important as what the tactics are? Because it does seem to me that Derry have had a habit of scoring these early goals all throughout the championship, and it is that early sucker blow that if Galway can just ride out the storm early on, they could potentially be a little bit more adventurous into the second half if the game is in the balance.
Yeah, because look, it's even, if you were leading at half time, it's a big plus, in particular with teams that I suppose can go well set up, especially defensively when you're hard to break them down. So it'd be kind of important that Galway aren't behind Derry at half time, because Derry will sit and they're quite good at it, and they'll sit and they'll hit you on the break. And I mean, their full back line will be coming off the shoulder. Every one will come off the shoulder, and they'll hit on the counter attack. So it would be very important that Galway are solid in the first while, so that Derry don't get that chance to sit back and hit on the counter every so often.
What did you make of Galway defensively against Armagh, actually?
Very strong. It was great to see it. I suppose the start off, one big thing I suppose, and I hope Galway may have improved in this, is the kick-out strategy. They were bombing a lot of balls just down the middle, kind of aimlessly, and Armagh tended to gain control a lot of that in the first, which probably led to 7-4 lead for them. So I'd be hoping that maybe, that the kick-out strategy will be a bit stronger, and that does allow you to be defensively set up better, which Galway were in the latter part of the game. So they're getting bodies back and they're understanding what to do and hitting the counter. So defensively we're strong. But again, Armagh did kick ball away that they shouldn't have done. And I don't see Derry kicking the ball like that if Galway get back with the numbers.
Just psychologically as well. I remember 2001, I remember reading the paper the next day, the Irish Independent are like, Galway are on the cusp of dominating football for a long, long time to come. They hadn't won a championship game at Croke Park, a knockout championship game between then, 2001 and the Derry game. So it is a monkey off their back.
Yeah. I suppose, look, that's the way things go. In 2001, we were a lot of young fellas came through, and we had a lot of older fellas that were, I suppose, ready to go to the gap. So sometimes it took.
We never replaced you, Kevin. We never replaced you.
I'm not so sure of that now. But yeah, look, it's about timing is vital, and to get younger lads in with experienced lads there. And I suppose Galway had that at the minute. Like there's probably 7 or 8 who were there playing 2018 when we bet Kerry up there in the championship in the Super 8s. So Galway probably have more experience of the bigger game in Croke Park now than actually Derry. I know you speak about Galway not winning 2001, but
yeah,
Derry have been there for youngs. So and they're coming from Division 4, Division 3, and still in Division 2. So Galway have 4 or 5 years behind them in Division 1, albeit went back down for 1 year. So you'd have to say that experience alone is certainly sitting on Galway, even though the record in Croke Park for a number of years hasn't been great. But in recent past, though, I think that's kind of shifted a little bit. But it'll be down to can Galway take this Derry defence apart, and that'll be quite difficult.
Yeah, we've had a lot of nostalgia on the show this morning. Alan Hansen, I slightly I jest when I say we never replaced Kevin Walsh, but there was the post Kevin Walsh midfield did kind of struggle. One of the men who came in 20 years later is the brilliant and almost enigmatic Paul Conroy, and he is part of one of your 4 key matchups here, Conroy versus Conor Glass. This is the first of your 4, Kevin.
Yeah, look at Paul has been, I think he's the last 14-15 games, I think he scored something like 127. So he's been shooting the lights out, and his shooting efficiency has been top class as well. So look at Paul is 33. He's rebounded very, very well since the double break of the legs, and look, he's totally committed to what he does. So I suppose this is his first big one. I think as in having to deal with the likes of Conor Glass, who looks to be, a similar steady-headed midfielder, solid, not just doing little bits and pieces here and there, and then stepping out of the game for 15 minutes. So this is going to be a huge test for Paul and a huge test for Conor Glass. So I think the middle part of the field with those 2 guys is going to be crucial for the outcome. But again, the kick-out strategy is going to be huge on that. So sometimes it's bypassed, but if it is anything like it was in the first 15 minutes against Armagh, the man-to-man battle is going to be crucial. So that one of the battles I see will be going a huge way towards winning this game.
One of the big questions for Pádraig Joyce will be who picks up Shane McGuigan. So who would you put on him?
I would think Sean Kelly would probably go on him. Shane has been really, really good. He's quick. He can use both feet. He's a free taker. But again, the way Galway, I suppose, their success, and sometimes back in our own time, lots of success is built around double teaming as well. So, sometimes it's not as simple as just 1v1 or who's doing well against 2. But when you go inside in the full back line now, you're probably going to be double teaming. I think anybody in today's game would have an open full back line. The forward is going to go on top, and regardless who's on who, because it's just the way the game has gone. The crossfield balls, the V cuts, the screening, all the stuff that goes on in today's game. If you haven't got a double teamer, I suppose there's a way of saying it. You delay, you deny, and you defend. And if your team are not the first 2, defending is very difficult. So, regardless who takes up McGuigan or Comer on the other side, there's going to be a certain amount of double teaming involved.
That brings us on to the 3rd matchup. Damien Comer, strangely enough, was actually sort of peripheral in the game for a long time. The last day, Kevin, then did come good, and obviously was involved in the Melee or whatever. Him and Brendan Rodgers now is your next one. Yeah,
I think that's a huge one. Look, and to be honest, I've been at the game the last day. Comer, I think, done a bit more than people think. He was involved in quite a bit of setting up people and just being kind of awkward for the opposition. And obviously, I think he got 3 points in play as well. So, Like,
is it the fact that he attracts so much attention? Because sometimes, like, he's double marked and so on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And look at it, he's also a goal threat, and people know he can get goals. So you just can't leave him isolated. And again, whether Derry want to do that or don't want to do it, they won't leave him isolated because that's the way they play now. So they have the defence set up. They've +1, +2 back there. So there's going to be a limited amount of space inside for the inside forward lines, I would predict. But I mean, there's two things here with that battle. Will Comer be getting the points? Will he get the frees? Will he get a goal in the match? And then you look at Rodgers. For me, is one of the best fullbacks in the last 10 years. You know, his ball control, his fitness, his athleticism. He brings an offer to the game. It's not just marking. And he will be bombing up the field. Will he be taking Comer with him? If Comer is brought back so often, will he gas out a bit, which he can do because he's such a big man? And, you know, I would expect that in that battle that Rory will be telling Rodgers to up the field as many times as he can. So it's how can Galway then maybe swap or whatever it is to protect Comer not to get cast out.
That's interesting because it felt maybe in the first quarter of the game against Armagh, where Galway were really struggling, that Comer looked gassed a little bit. It might have just been because I was in the Cusack and he was right in front of me.
Comer always looks gassed on, though. That's just the look in his face.
But what was kind of interesting to me was that he was kind of like just hanging deep and actually collecting the short kick out off the goalkeeper. And I was like, this is supposed to be your target man. I know he's not necessarily there. He comes out deep all the time, but he was collecting the short kick out, was the first man to take the ball up the pitch on occasion in those first 15 minutes. I'm not sure, is that a tactical instruction, Kevin? Is that something that Comer does himself, or what do you read into moments like that? Because Derry will have that packed defence again, and he might have to do that this weekend.
I suppose when a team is on top and winning ball, and that's why the midfield battle there, as I would have said, is going to be crucial, because if you win enough ball, all the backs nowadays are heading up that field, and you know, if you don't follow them or go with them, you're being deemed as lazy or whatever your thing. So either way, you will find yourself back there if your team isn't in possession, because you're going to be ran at, and that's why I'm saying that Derry full back time will probably push as much as they can. Number one is supposed to take the guys out of the scoring zone. Number two, to get on the end of scores themselves or set them up. And number three, if you do, we'll say, do your analysis and you feel that you can run a certain player, I suppose, to make them a little bit gassed out, that's another ploy. So that's going to be crucial on that. But I suppose you have no choices really, unless your midfield area gets control, that you will end up back. And look, if you look at Galway last week, including Armagh, there was 15 back, not 14. There's actually, the goalie wasn't even, the Armagh goalie wasn't even in the half once, where all the Galway players went back. So I suppose that's something that Galway have been working on and that they're willing to do to get their defensive system right.
I think the matchup that we're all expecting is that Shane Walsh will be picked up by Chrissy McCaig. You're not going to make a case that's not going to happen, Kevin, I presume?
No, I expect McCaig will pick up Shane. And I just seen an article he wrote himself about a week ago where he said that whatever job he has to do, he'll do. It might mean not even looking at the ball once. He will be looking at his opponent. I think he more or less said that. So I do expect that he will be the man marker for Shane. That's going to be a crucial one as well. And I suppose, you know, Shane himself, I suppose, coming to the bigger games in Croke Park in relation to getting on the scoreboard and stuff, there's something there he needs to prove for himself as well, that he might be that bit more involved and find a way, if he is getting attraction, that he can get into the game a bit more often, and that his teammates can help him to get into the game a bit more often. If that takes, you know, screening or whatever it takes to allow one of the more skillful players to get on the ball, that's something the team, I hope, will have worked on to allow Shane get some space. But that's something.
Explain that, Kevin. Actually, I find that fascinating. Explain that if you can.
Well, it's just that, you know, I mean, you know, in the GAA we've an awful habit of running all the time to try and get loose, and you know, the one way you lose an opponent is by change of pace or change of direction. That's the two things that is the best way you lose an opponent. Now, if you're being stuck to and everything else, players need to calm down and just stand for a while. Get your opponents or your colleagues with you, join you in a certain area and try to get you free. Little things like that you can work on in training, because winning a ball out in lane 1, lane 5 for your best player or your most skillful player, you're not going to score in those areas. So sometimes the defence are quite happy to let you win the ball out there, where in actual fact, if you could win the ball in the middle 3 lanes by using your own teammates, you're in a far better position. So it's just that, I suppose, for Shane and McCaig, that's a huge battle to see how much Shane will get involved in the game.
Can't wait for it. And Shane Walsh's performance had a bit of everything the last day. So I want your predictions for both semi-finals, Kevin, actually now.
Yeah, I went slightly with Galway the last day, even though it went to penalties. I believe they're the more experienced team. They're still the more experienced team than Derry are. I think Derry have won an Ulster this year from Division 2, which is a huge achievement. Don't believe there's Ulster is as strong as it was. I think Tyrone have gone back a lot. Donegal have gone back a lot. You're looking at, I suppose, Armagh, who only spent one season in Division 1. You're now with Derry in Division 2. So I'm going to call Galway slightly, but there's a but there. And I think the biggest but here is that Galway have the patience, number one, that if they don't get a fast break, that they're the patience not to kick ball inside if Derry are completely matched up at the back. Because I do believe Derry are far stronger at the back than Armagh. And if they've got their runners based coming through in the right areas, not just run all over the place, that they're a bit more, how to say it to you, send them one and two and three, the third runner in the same areas just to pull that defence apart. And again, if Derry are like that they will bring out their full forwards to the outside and have runners off the shoulders to break down the defence rather than leaving two inside and hoping it'll work out. So there's loads of stuff that's there to break down the defence, and that's the biggest thing for Galway.
What about the other game?
I believe, and I don't know, I have no confirmation, that Conor Callan might be in trouble and injury-wise. I think if he is, I'll be honest, I can only see one winner. I thought Dublin against Cork, while they won the game by 11 points for 21 points, they don't have a goal threat at the minute with the lads up front. McCarthy and Conor Callan are absolutely huge for Dublin. And I think if either of them aren't there, I'm going to call Kerry. If both are there, the fact that Dublin are on their home ground, it's worth 5 or 6 points to them, it'll be really, really tight. But I'm going to call it Conor Callan's best that Kerry will win, handy enough.
Thanks a million for your time, Kevin, and enjoy the game Saturday.
Welcome, guys. Best of luck.